Good morning, people. Watchwoman 65, Lisa Boyce here. Um, you ever talk to someone in a conversation or hear something, just random people talking on TV or whatever, and all of a sudden a word out of nowhere will just come out and illuminate itself in your spirit? Well, that kind of happened to me this morning. I'm sitting here and I've been up since about 4, and I'm sitting and I'm half asleep and so forth. And all of a sudden, I'm looking at this show, and they were just talking random sentences, and all of a sudden, they said a word. Actually, they said 2 words that sparked my attention. I'm like, what? And they had a totally different meaning for what they were saying, but it opened my attention. It got in my spirit. The 2 words were get ready. Now I'm sitting there half asleep, and all of a sudden he says those words and my eyes just opened up, and I looked and I said, I wonder, does he realize what he was saying? He said, get ready. And he was talking about something else, but yet I picked it up as meaning something different. I wanted to let you know that this morning. I have an article, and I give thanks to Brother Keegan for being up early in the morning sending me these articles. This is off of Breaking Israeli News, and this actually came out Monday, I think the 25th, Tuesday, the 25th. But it's talking about the coronaviruses, and it's talking about a rabbi that says that China hit with other biblical plagues as Micah's end of days prophecy says, rabbi. Okay, I will do. That was Brother Tim. Okay, I will do that. Okay, it says here, and this is out of Ezekiel 30:16. It says, I will set fire to Egypt. But I'm going to read out of, says that I will set fire to Egypt. Sin shall have great pain, and no shall be rent asunder, and Noph shall have distresses daily. Now, the word sin and the word no, N-O, these are actual like providences and cities that they're talking about. I looked this up, but I'm going to read this. I'm going to continue to read this. There are dead pigs on the platform eating place for birds and ravens. The animals are dying. It says that everyone has heard of coronavirus, but the truth is that China is in the midst of dealing with a wave of several plagues. Several rabbis see this as a replay of the plagues in Egypt in a pre-Messianic manner and place. Biblical prophecy that God will strike China before the Messiah. Now, remember, keep in mind, they're talking about their Messiah. They're not talking about the Messiah that's going to come up and take us home for the rapture. They're not talking about Jesus Christ. 2 weeks ago, Rabbi Yosef Pinto, an internationally acclaimed Israeli mystic rabbi who currently lives in Morocco, made a statement about the coronavirus hitting China. The rabbi cited the prophet Ezekiel as his source. And he cited Ezekiel 30:15-16. It says, I will pour out my anger upon sin, the stronghold of Egypt, and I will destroy the wealth of No, N-O. I will set fire to Egypt. Sin shall wreath in anguish, and No shall be torn apart. Now, I looked up what he was talking about. And these are ancient cities in Egypt. I'm going to do more research on that. These are ancient cities in Egypt. Now, it says here the modern Hebrew, sin, is the name for China. I'm going to go on with this. The coronavirus. The Chinese government is being very secretive about the details of this virus. But what is clear is that the coronavirus, more specifically referred to as COVID-19, is highly contagious. On December 31st, the government of China been treating the first case of the coronavirus that appeared in the Wuhan province. The first deaths were reported just 11 days later. 10 days later, the virus had spread to other countries in Asia. And one day after that, the first case was reported in the U.S. 1 month after the first cases were reported. The World Health Organization, a global health emergency, the World Health Organization declared a global health emergency and travel restrictions were set in place. More than 75,000 cases of the coronavirus has been confirmed in China, and at least 2,200 people have died. In less than 3 months, it's infected almost 78,000 people in more than 24 countries. In Hubei province, where the disease began, the death rate has been 2.9%. However, in some other provinces where it has been less prevalent, the death rate has been as low as 0.4%. Live Science reported that the death rate soars to 14.8% in those 80 and older. Among those ages 70 to 79, the COVID-19 death rate in China seems to be about 8%. It's 3.6% for those ages 60 to 69, 1.3% for 50 to 59, and 0.4% for age group 40 to 49, and just 0.2% for people ages 10 to 39. Nobody under the age of 9 has died of this virus to date. Now let's talk about the locusts. The biblical plague that once left Egypt bereft and barren is threatening to hit China. Eastern Africa has already been overrun by a swarm of desert locusts, creating famine in regions already living on the edge of starvation. The swarm of locusts is the largest suffered by the region in several decades. A square mile of swarm can be formed by up to 210 million locusts, which can eat as much as 90,000, which can eat as much food as 90,000 people in a day. That's terrible. Huge swarms are highly mobile, able to travel up to 90 miles a day. If wind conditions are in their favor, scientists blame unusual weather patterns bringing rains and cyclones that generate intensive breeding cycles. China has a long and bitter history of locust swarms, with more than 840 being recorded in the official records over the past 2,700 years. The Chinese government has tried to dismiss the threat, with Global Times, a government news service, reporting that there is little chance of a locust plague expanding in China. The government suggested that censored farmers should raise ducks and chickens to control any locust that comes their way. To illustrate the point, the farmland division of the government released 1,000 duck troops to protect their border. The government did not mention that the species of locust that is threatening China emits a foul-smelling secretion that is meant to deter predators. Birds typically do not seek them out as a food source. This article also suggested that locusts could be fried and consumed by people, noting that some farmers considered the plague of locusts to actually be a blessing. Our corn harvest would be reduced for sure by catching locusts bought me a lot of money. An anonymous villager told the Beijing News. Locusts are on the restaurant menus in many regions in China, fresh or frozen. And they're priced from 17 to 400 yen per kilogram, depending on different species. That's $2.43 in American dollars. Can you believe that? For the biblically inclined, swarms of locusts invoke images of pre-Exodus Egypt. They covered the face of the whole land so that the land was darkened, and they ate all the plants in the land and all the fruit on the trees that they had none left. Not a green thing remained, neither tree or plant in the field throughout all the land of Egypt. That's in Exodus. Now, let's go on to the bubonic plague. Just a few months ago, while the coronavirus was incubating in the wet market of Wuhan, Chinese doctors were struggling to prevent the bubonic plague from bursting forth as an epidemic. Only a handful of cases were diagnosed, but the diseases were has a horrifying history. And China is one of the few countries that is threatened by regular epidemics of the disease. You see how this one disease, coronavirus, is bringing in all this other stuff. Bubonic plague is making a comeback with close to 50,000 human cases being diagnosed in the last 2 decades. It is now categorized by the World Health Organization as a re-emerging disease. If it wasn't enough with coronavirus, this is making a comeback too. The last outbreak of bubonic plague in the U.S. was 1924 and was centered in LA. The 6th plague in Egypt, boils, may very well have been the bubonic plague, whose characteristic symptoms is boil-like skin lesions that form black ulcers. Now, while I was looking at that and reading that, the thing that came to mind was what's going to happen in the book of Revelation when they take the mark of the beast. They're going to break out in painful boils or lesions on their skin. That could be it right there. I'm just saying. The connection between the bubonic plague and Egypt was proven in 2010 when scientists traced the plague to ancient Egypt. Listen to this in Exodus 9:9. And it shall become a fine dust over all the land of Egypt and cause an inflammation breaking out in boils on man and beast throughout the land of Egypt. Interesting. I'm telling you, that's what's going to happen when the rapture takes place. It says here, ancient cultures lived close to the livestock, and the plague was transferred from the animals by fleas. While exploring ruins in Egypt, they found 3,000-year-old remains of Nile rats and used fine sieves to discover the remains of fleas, both carriers of the plague. The plague of boils is what they call it. As are all the plagues that struck Egypt before the Exodus, is prophesied to return in the end of days by Zechariah, who described it as a disease of rotting flesh. I'm going to leave this article in the description box. I want you to read the rest of this. There's the African swine flu, that's coming back. And this is China's is the world's largest pork consumer, accounting for more than half of global pork consumption. I'm going to leave this article here. This is very interesting of how these plagues of Egypt are coming into China. This is just the beginning. I got some more news that I'm going to come back with later on this morning. But in the meantime, I will leave this article in the description box. I wanted you to know what's going on with these plagues and how this coronavirus is bringing in other things. Now, like I said, that rabbi is looking for the Antichrist. We're looking for the Christ. But he still has a point with these plagues and this coronavirus. I'll be back on later. Thank you.